Okay, breaking news. I just found out that if you are into underwater photography, we have a special deal for you at the end of this podcast. We're going to give you a promo code that will get you 10% off on Icolite camera housings for underwater photography. Stay tuned at the end of the show.
You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Shooting drop-dead gorgeous photographs above sea level can be challenging. Shooting drop-dead gorgeous photographs underwater is something I'm not quite sure I'll ever be able to write home about. Today's guests have underwater photography down pat. For the record, this is going to be the first of two shows we have in the works on the topic of underwater photography as seen through the eyes of four very talented creative artists. Joining us today from Jakarta via Skype is Hengki Koentjoro, and calling in from another distant locale on this exotic planet we live on is photographer Christian Vizl, also via Skype. Before we fire up today's show, Al's Gearhead Pick of the Week. This week, we're talking about Seattle Sports Glacier Clear bags. This is an underwater show, so we figure it's perfect. There's a slew of new waterproof bags that are available in a variety of sizes. If your plans include boating, kayaking, or other activities that include getting broadsided by rogue waves or water balloons, you should check them out. Seattle Sports Glacier Clear bags range in size from 6 by 10 inches through 12.5 by 28 inches. And now on with our show. Our first guest today is Hengki Koentjoro. He's a fine art photographer based in Jakarta, Indonesia. His stunning black and white work incorporates images of land and sea, and germane to this episode, also underwater landscapes, really good ones too. He has had gallery exhibitions throughout the world, won numerous prizes, including the 2014 Hasselblad Master in Landscape and Nature category. He's also published books. His first one is called Monohydra and has an introduction by Michael Kenna. His second recently published book is called The Refined Eye with an introduction by Jacques Sturgis. That said, welcome, Hengki.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Indeed, Michael Kenna has been my inspiration since the beginning of my career. So I pretty much look up to him in terms of his works and his dedication with fine art, black and white photography. Yes.
I got to ask you something. We're all obviously influenced by different photographers, artists, or whatever it is, but we all have influences in our life. What came first, your eye or Michael Kenna?
Well, actually, everything started with Ansel Adams, to tell you the truth. He's the one that really teach me how to look in black and white, because when the first time I saw his work, I never thought that a black and white photography can be that beautiful. So that is the one reason why I went to America to study at Brooks Institute of Photography, basically to study a little bit about the zone system. And while I'm studying the zone system, then I stumble upon Michael Kenna's work. Mm-hmm. So in a way, this two giant master is the one that pretty much shape up my career. You know, it's like a blueprint that they led me to what I'm right now. So I mean, I saw Michael Kenna's work, and then I said I have to do something like this. So I pretty much copy or inspired, if you want to say, by his mainly his composition, and with Ansel Adams, I would say with the way Ansel play with his tonality, or creating atmospheric kind of a photography. So those two has a very strong influence on me.
And you're not just underwater, you do above water as well. Your landscape photography is absolutely spectacular, equally spectacular, I will say. You seem to have a very easy fluidity going back and forth between shooting on land and underwater. Do you find, obviously there's technical differences, but aesthetically, do you have a different approach shooting, say, mountains as opposed to shooting things underwater?
Well, I'm not sure it's completely different. I don't really document things under the water. Just like above the water, I try to create some sort of like an atmospheric photography. So I'm looking at like the surreal kind of ethereal kind of a scene under the water. I look at shapes, I look at lines, and I look at lighting, and the combination of all things, I would say, that lead me to atmospheric kind of photography. Again, like Ansel Adam, he plays a lot in post production. He did dodging and he did burning, and there's a reason for that. Well, he trying to create, like I said, an atmospheric kind of photography.
Something that's very apparent when going through all of the galleries of your work is that they all hold together as a group. There's a commonality to them. And it has to do not only with composition, which is something you capture in camera when you're taking the photograph, but the tonality and the mood and the visual dynamics is very, very similar through them. So is it safe to assume that you spend a good deal of time post-production, post-capture, I should say, getting these effects?
Yes, I use Adobe Lightroom as well as the Nik software and Nik Silver FX Pro. Basically, those are the two software I use from color to black and white. And after that, I use that to build up my style.
Do you shoot color at all? Is this something that you do?
Yes, the reason I like to shoot color is because I like to play around what we call a channel mixer.
Okay.
You are able to fine tune the tonality of black and white using channel mixer. You want a blue color gets darker, or the red or the green gets brighter. You can do that separately. You can fine tune it separately. So I find it's more challenging and satisfying to shoot in color and then convert it to black and white.
Do you capture any images for final presentation in color, or is your goal just to do black and white? Are you pure monochrome at this point, as far as your final image?
Yes, as far as final image, everything is in monochrome, in black and white. But when you shoot, you still have to visualize things like what Ansel Adams teach us, that you should know how it looks like in black and white when you shoot it. So it's a pre-visualization, I would say. And then you pretty much know what you want to do later on in the post-production, whether you want to make the background darker or you want to make the foreground brighter. It's already in the system. So in a way, it's one workflow. Yeah.
What are you shooting with? What camera system are you using?
I'm using a regular DSLR right now. May I mention the brand?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm using the D800 Nikon D800E, and I'm still, believe it or not, using the 5D, the Canon 5D, the old 5D, and I use the Hasselblad. I have the 503 CW.
That was the last Hasselblad that doesn't need batteries. That was it.
That's correct. That's correct. I loved it. I mean, there's one thing in film that cannot be replicated in digital, I suppose. That the classic grainy Kodak T-Max 400 or the Ilford 400 is so unique. I mean, you cannot replace it. So I still in love with film, and I'm not sure I can leave film just like that. I still come back sometimes to film.
We understand completely here.
I was just going to ask about your lens choices when you're shooting underwater.
Oh, mostly wide angle. When I use a Nikon D80. That's my very first underwater camera, using a 10 millimeters fisheye lens.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
and then most of the monohydra book is using the very simple Canon G10 with an Icolite housing. And now I'm using the Olympus TG4.
Really?
The Olympus. Yeah.
We're familiar with all those cameras. We understand.
Beautiful. It's a simple camera compared to all the professional that goes underwater. they have the huge camera sometimes. But I found to me, it's much easier to carry such a point and shoot camera, like a small camera. So you can concentrate more, and you don't get tired, of course, because you don't have assistant when you go shoot underwater.
I love the candor that, you use Hasselblads, but you also use point and shoots too, because I'm a big advocate of using whatever camera you have, because they all take wonderful pictures with their own qualities. But I noticed when going through your work online that almost everything, I think everything that I saw is cropped square. Now, obviously, that's from your Hasselblad days, but are you carrying that through with everything you're shooting with your Nikon too? So you're cropping. Do you mask off your finder or anything like that, or do you just eyeball it using the grid screens when you're composing pictures this way?
I used to zoom 10% bigger. That's my rule of thumb. I just make it a little bit bigger. So it turns out that for me, it's so much easier to crop it when it's a little bit bigger. Yes, the subject is going to be a bit smaller, but for some reason, the square just looks perfect. If you do it 10% slightly bigger than if you would like to shoot normal in rectangular format. And of course, this is because of Michael Kina. Yeah, I said I want to be like this guy. I want to be like a master the way he composed everything. The minimalist kind of a style, because it looks less is more. Yeah, the way he played with all the negative space, he is such a master with it.
There's not a single item in his photographs that's overdone. Everything there has a place. There's nothing unnecessary. That's the key to it. And your work has that same quality. Too.
Thank you. I mean, Michael Kina would come back to the same tree like 7 years in a row. Like this is the tree in Hokkaido. He keeps shooting the same tree over and over and over again.
And what about you then? Do you return to the same places often, particularly with your underwater work? Do you know a certain area that you'd like to go to and the creatures that you're looking for?
The land, yes, but underwater is kind of difficult because you can never predict what goes under the water, and we go to the same place, but different current, different month, different season. You will have completely different life under the water. So as much as you want to repeat the same thing, I'm afraid you won't be able to do that.
Do you dive? Do you snorkel? How do you approach it from that side? Are you have you always been an underwater person, or you just decided that you need to take your photography to a new place?
It's hard not to dive in Indonesia because we have 13,000 islands.
Right.
I think this is dubbed as the biggest archipelago nation on Earth. And the Indian Ocean and the Pacific is like on the left and the right side of Indonesia. So the meeting of these two ocean, the hot one is the Indian and the cold one is the Pacific. It creates some sort like a soup. That's perfect for marine biodiversity in our area.
It's something I wanted to ask about the idea of color in black and white. We touched on it earlier. But when you're underwater, do you feel the same ability to see in black and white, especially when the colors are so vibrant and they're so different, I guess? Is that something?
I guess when you are underwater, everything is kind of bluish. Well, in the first 5 meters, yes, the sun still can penetrate, but below 15 feet or below 5 meters, everything kind of seeing their color.
It becomes monochrome essentially once you get down to that depth. So you already are kind of, it's blue, but you're seeing monochrome really.
Yes, I see monochrome. That's why I search for texture maybe.
Right.
I'm looking for a certain shapes, the lines maybe, and I'm looking up all combination together. I love to shoot bubbles. I love to shoot the sun. I always look up, and every time I look up, I always blow my own bubble. And if the water is perfect, sometimes you can see the light rays from the sun penetrating through the water, and that creates some like surreal kind of scene. So I look at everything basically, and then I look at things in black and white. So I don't search for color, of course.
Right.
I don't use flash, by the way.
No.
No, I not even a light, not a tungsten light. Just completely, just one camera. That's all. 30 meters is the deepest you can go. 90 feet is the deepest you can go, and below that, all you see is just white and blue. So it's almost the same like white and black. Only the black it becomes blue. So in a way, it helps me a little bit to compose in black and white. There's no distraction of color in there.
Right.
Whereas if you're the first 5 meters, the sun still penetrates through, and you still can see all the color. That's the difference, I would say.
Right. And in terms of the light, I mean, you talked a bit about looking up and having the light come through the water, which is obviously beautiful in the photos that I've seen. But do you look? How do you compare the light that you're looking for when you're on land compared to when you're underwater?
Basically, when I dive, I don't have a certain goal I want to achieve. I just dive having fun. And if I see something interesting, then I would capture it. And if it's just doing like that. So I would say like I would dive like 3 times a day from 9 o'clock to 2 p.m. Each dive would allow me, the oxygen tank would allow me to dive around 1 hour. So 3 hours dive in a day. I usually finish about 16 gig of film. So I shoot a lot.
That was actually a question I had, because knowing that you're using a smaller camera, and in this case a point and shoot, which I think is incredible.
Yeah.
And especially compared to on land, if you have a Hasselblad or a D800, it enables you to shoot faster. But does that affect your the way you compose, or do you just shoot and then figure it out in post production?
I just shoot, and usually most of again, just like land, you do some pre-visualization. If it's a scenery under the water, then you pretty much know that you what you're gonna do later on the post production. If it's an animal like a soft coral, usually the soft coral has a very beautiful tentacles, like a very beautiful texture in it. So you pretty much know what you're going to do later on in the post-production.
Do you dive by yourself?
You're not supposed to. I always have a buddy. Yeah, I mean, it's a man-made equipment. It can fail.
Right.
If you're alone, then you're in danger. So that's the 3 rules that always follow. Is always plan your dive and dive your plan, and then you always have a buddy with you. And number 3, just be open-minded. Remember that you're an alien, so you make sure you take only picture and leave only bubbles. You don't destroy the environment. That's the 3 rules that I always follow. Yeah.
And the person, your buddy, is also a photographer? Or I guess my question is about how you give yourself the time and the space to do the work that you need to do when you're underwater. Do you?
Yes, it's better, because it's going to be very boring for a non-photographer to follow a photographer under the water. So most of the time, my friend are also a photographer. So we know each other. And we sometimes he just stay a couple of meters away from me, and when we pretty much know when to stop, when to search, and when to move again. Somehow we know that. Yes, so it's better to have a photographer as a buddy.
When you're using the Olympus, the TG cameras, what are your settings? Do you use their underwater settings, and how do you balance? How do you set your camera?
No, because if you set it in underwater, you cannot set it in RAW.
In RAW, right.
Right.
Yeah, that's a problem. So I have to set everything normal. because I always put it in RAW, not in the 16 megabyte, but in the RAW plus 16 megabyte. Yeah.
And your ISO
You have to
and
put it in ISO. Usually underwater, I use 100, the lowest, because it's so bright under the water. Actually, it's blue, but for some reason I always get but 1 of 60 a second. That's one thing that I don't understand up till now. It looks dark, but I'm getting a reading about 160 a second f 5.6 most of the time. f4 5.6. Yeah.
For the past couple of years, I've also been using an Olympus. I have an older TG850, and that's one model below the TG4. And it doesn't do RAW, unfortunately, but it does have a 21 millimeter equivalent lens, and that's why I got it. But it is amazing the image quality you get from these tiny cameras, especially underwater, when you could just trash them, and it's fine. It's okay.
The equipment nowadays is just so amazing. I mean, the TG4 with the RAW, and when you open it up, you really have to blow it like a 200% in order to compare to see the difference with the DSLR camera. So,
and the only accessory you need is a wrist strap. That's it.
That's right. And you can bang them. You can drop them.
Sure.
Do you know that the TG4 can get inside the water, I think 15 meters without housing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Actually, the truth of the matter is it could actually go down deeper. The limit is actually the water pressure pushes down on the buttons of the camera and sort of shorts it out. But it actually is waterproof much deeper. It's just that the buttons no longer function. That's what's stopping you.
I see. So I ended up buying the housing. So that's a double whammy for safety, right? I mean, you cannot go wrong there.
And can you talk a bit about, I know you mentioned you used an Icolite housing for the Canon G10.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you use? Any other underwater accessories specifically?
No lights, no flash, just camera and the housing. That's it. I don't want to think too much under the water. I just want as simple as possible.
And are you always thinking the final product will be a print?
If people wants to buy it, then I'll print it. But most of the time, it's for web, for promotion in the web, Facebook, for social media.
Do you always print at the same size, or will you custom print sizes?
I did 3 sizes: the 17 by 17, 24 by 24 inches, and all the way to 1 meters.
This is maybe a vague question, but can you just talk a little bit about the difference between shooting on land and shooting on water when you're thinking like an art photographer, when you're thinking mostly about composition and light, and you're not worried so much about chasing down an animal or anything? How do you approach those two, and what can you talk about in terms of the differences?
Not much in difference. I would say I let them show me. I let nature dictate me what to take. Once it reveal herself, then I should know how to compose. I just let things develop. I never search for a certain thing. If I find it good, I'll take a picture of it. If I don't, then I'll do it later. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of abstract how to explain it. Yeah. Just let things develop for itself, I would say.
And that's the same if you're on land, if you're hiking.
That's just on land. Basically, it doesn't matter where you are, what camera you use. If the approach should be exactly the same.
All right. Well, Hengki, thank you so much for joining us today. Terrific talking with you. Again, I'm going to just keep gushing about your work. And for our listeners, if you have not seen his work, you should definitely check it out. Hengki, what's your website? Can you tell us so people could look it up?
Yes, it's www.henki-koentjoro.com.
Okay. And for the spelling, come to our site. You'll see it right there.
Yeah, we'll put a link.
It'll all the links will be on our site when this podcast goes live.
And what are you working on next? Yes. What is your tomorrow project?
I'm looking at global warming. Mm-hmm. a lot of islands get disappear because of the rising of the sea level. So I'm documenting, especially in the north coast of Java Island. I live in Java Island, so it's just right next door to me. So I've been shooting a lot of documentary. I would say documentary photography is more like photojournalism more than fine art. Although the approach kind of fine art, I do long exposure, but it's more like documenting people that get displaced from their house. I mean, cemetery that's in the middle of the water, in the ocean, that kind of thing.
How long has this been evident that the islands are vanishing? How long has it been going on by you?
Well, I used to see a house 1 kilometers away. Now the house is gone. Now the ocean is about 1 kilometers inland. So it's happening. It's real. The global warming, I would say. I mean, I see it myself. I mean, normally we don't get a tornado in Java Island, and suddenly for the last 5 years we see a lot of tornado. And then we see a lot of coral bleaching in when I was diving. So that's the very sign of global warming.
Yeah.
It does exist and it's real, and I saw it, and I'm documenting it.
Well, we look forward to seeing the efforts of your work, and if anyone can do it, I'm sure you're the person for the job. Hengki, thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to seeing more of your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John and Alan.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
Christian Vizl is an underwater photographer based in his native Mexico. His work blends wildlife photography and art photography into beautiful imagery with a serene sensibility in which creatures of the sea seem suspended, almost motionless. His work is equally captivating in both color and black and white, and has appeared in many publications including Sport Diver, The Times of London, and National Geographic's Blue Hope book. He has also won numerous awards for his underwater work, including a 2017 Sony World Photography Award. Christian, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. We were looking at your photographs. Needless to say, we were looking at your photographs very carefully, and your work is really beautiful. One of the first questions I have for you is, what came first for you, your love of nature and underwater, or your love of photography? Where did you start?
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And I mean, as back as I can remember, I have always loved nature, and especially the ocean. I can remember, when I was very young, my parents took me to vacation on the beach in Mexico. And I would just sit in a beach, completely by myself, and just look at the ocean and imagine what would it happen if suddenly all the water would just disappear, but all the animals would stay in the place wherever they were. So I could go inside the ocean and walk through it and see where all the animals were. That's one of my first childhood dreams. And I think photography came later. My love for photography, I think it came especially because of Ansel Adams. I remember just looking at his images of landscapes in black and white, and got me fascinated. And I think I got my first camera around 15 years old or something like that. Yeah, but definitely first it was the love for nature.
And when did you first start shooting underwater?
That came actually very, very late in my life, and because I knew even as a kid, a young guy, that I would love diving, and I saw all these beautiful documentaries by Jacques Cousteau, and I was very inspired by him. And I have encyclopedias of the ocean growing up. But my first dive came late in my life, when I was like around 20 years old. But I knew, even many, many years before my first dive, that I was gonna love it so much that I would need to be an instructor to be able to dive as much as I would love to. So I had colleagues in the same dive center, and they were doing underwater photo and video. But I don't know why. It's something I don't even understand. That I never asked them, hey, give me your camera, so I can take some pictures. So I was just doing my thing on the water, and I was taking pictures, but above water. And then many, many years later, around, I don't know, in maybe 2009 or something like that, doing a dive trip to Belize with a friend. He's a cinematographer, and we were underwater, and then suddenly he just gave me his camera, and I thought he needed for me to, but it was a video camera, and I thought he needed me to help him for a little while, but then suddenly he left me with his camera. So I just turned it on and started shooting some video on the water, and had this whole new experience, of diving. And I loved it, and that was the first time I felt the bug, and the need to get my own camera and start shooting on the water. And when I did it, two of my greatest passions just came together, and from then I just hit it off, Yeah.
What do you find to be one of the more challenging aspects of shooting underwater as opposed to shooting above water?
Logistics and money.
Well, talk a little bit about that. I mean, talk about a little bit of your preparation and how you go about a shoot. Do you always have one goal in mind, or do you kind of just get underneath there and then figure it out?
And also, how much money do you have to cover the camera with to make it waterproof?
Yeah, that's actually the most expensive item in underwater photography, the housing. Yeah, it can be way more expensive than the camera itself, yes. I still have the exact same camera that I started to take pictures with. I haven't changed it.
Which is?
It's a Canon 5D Mark II.
Ah, okay. All
yes, right. and I bought that one at the time because I had another friend in Mexico City. He was some president of cinematographers in Mexico, and he's very technical. So I asked him, hey, what camera do you recommend? Because I want to do this, and this. And then he just said Canon 5D Mark II. So I didn't ask why. I just went and buy it because I trusted him. And that has been my camera. Now I'm gonna change because I wanna do another series with the motion on the water, and I cannot do the rear sync flash with the Canon camera. And I've been waiting for Canon to open this, but they haven't. I can just shoot, with the curtain at the beginning of the shooting, and that doesn't work for me for movement. So I need to change now. Yes, because of that, and because it's a fine camera, and so I'm sorry, I just went off. What was the original?
No, that was good. That was fine.
While you're there, let me ask you a bit more about your gear. What is the housing you use and the lights? And we want to kind of cover that also.
I've been using also the Aquatica housing. They're made in Canada, and they're fantastic. I haven't had any problems in I don't know, 7-8 years. It's a fantastic equipment. I've only serviced it once. I'm not very good at taking care of my equipment, but they are really strong, and I love it. I have the 15 fisheye lens, and then I have a 16-35, which is like the one I mostly use. For macro, I have a 100 millimeter, but now I think I'm gonna also start using a 16 millimeter macro because it gives you better flexibility. It's very hard to focus with 100 millimeter on the water.
Yeah.
And I use also a couple of Enon flashes, underwater flashes, which I love them. They're very small and very powerful and very quick.
What was the name of the flashes?
It's a brand. They are called Enon.
Okay.
Yeah, Enon, and they are really good.
All right.
What's the deepest you go down shooting? How far down do you go before it's just not doable anymore?
Well, you can go as deep as you are able to, with your diving experience. And there is a lot of light, You lose a lot of colors the deeper you go. But if you take a flash, then, that doesn't, But usually the light and the colors and well, not the colors, but the light, the rays and the light, it's very near the surface. So It's very rare that you need to go deeper than, I don't know, like 70 feet, 80 feet. And a lot of my images are just taken with a snorkel gear in the surface, sharks, whales, so many fishes that you can find at the surface.
You know, what I find interesting is that when you think of underwater photography, you watch National Geographic, Jacques Cousteau, and all these other people who've just been trailblazers. You think of exotic colors and just color beyond our imagination. Yet, looking at your work, you have some very bold, colorful images, but some of the strongest pictures are actually monochrome in black and white. What's your feeling about that?
Yes, because my background, the first role I ever shot in my life was black and white. And I always loved black and white. And I think, to create like amazing black and white images, I think you need to see in black and white the scenery. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously you're looking in color, but you need to see beyond that and see the structure that creates, the contrast and the lines and, I don't know, so many aspects that can create an appealing black and white image. And I always loved black and white, so my background is black and white, above water. And I used to develop my own films, but very, very, I mean, just as a hobby, in my bathroom, as a kid. So my first shootings on the water were also black and white. I mean, I shoot in color because of technical thing. It's better to shoot in color and then transform it into black and white in post-production. But you have to be able to see the scenery in black and white, and what does work. Because I also see a lot of photographers that, just take just whatever random picture in color, and then, they think it will work in black and white just because you take the color out. But in my opinion, that doesn't work that way,
So is it safe to assume that when you're underwater shooting, you're shooting color to begin with, but are you seeing the image in a final form as monochrome?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And what in a case like that, then, and as I've seen many of your recent images where you have the creatures that seem to be suspended with the light, what light do you look for? I mean, is there certain times of day that you like to shoot, or are you always getting below so you can get some of the light coming down from the surface? Is there certain things you look for when you're underwater?
Actually, one of my goals as a photographer is just, to be able to take an amazing picture in any circumstance, because, I think beauty is everywhere all the time. Just need to look for it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the beautiful light can be in the morning, morning rays, but also at midday, the rays are completely different and the light is completely different. But also sometimes it works wonderful in the afternoon. So I'm always open at any time that I'm able to go in the water to look for that particular beauty that I can find in that particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like, in my own personal case, to have a lot of expectations,
Okay.
And I don't want, I usually don't like to go with a mindset of, okay, I want to shoot this and this and this.
Right.
I want to be open, because if you're not open, then you're missing a lot of opportunities that might appear that that you might not be able to forecast.
Mm-hmm. But you must do your research in terms of knowing the type of creatures you're going to be finding in that part of the ocean, and is there a lot of time spent on that side of it, or do you just kind of plunge in and find what's there?
That definitely, for that type of planning, definitely, if because animals on the water and also land, they are seasonal most of the time, especially if you're not looking in the reefs, because I barely shoot in the reefs.
Mm-hmm.
In the reefs, you can find a lot of animals that live there, and actually, I've tried that. I've been like 5 days in a row shooting the exact same fish, because every time you go down, you know where they're gonna be.
Right.
And
After a while, do they know where you're going to be?
yeah, they get used to your presence if you're respectful, and let them know, that you're not gonna hurt them or harass them, or then they get used to your company, and then they allow you to be closer, and then that's the part that I truly enjoy the most from what I do. Try to establish a connection with life that is so different that from our human experience. So it's a challenge how you connect with these animals that are completely different as you. They speak a completely different language, and so trying to establish that connection is, I think, my true passion.
And how do you do that? Is there any techniques you use, or is it more of just a philosophical state you put yourself in?
I think photography, or great photography, or the photography that is going to transcend in time, it's the one where the photographer doesn't go and take pictures from an animal or whatever he's shooting, or a person or whatever. I think the picture, the images that are going to transcend, or a photographer that's going to transcend, is the one who's capable of going, for example, underwater and express through his photography how he felt during the presence of that particular animal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
For me, photography is not about shooting an animal. For me, it's about how do I feel when I'm there, and try to convey all that passion and love into an image. So, in order to get, this is something that I've learned through time, okay? This is what my photography has taken me to, okay? But it has been a long process. So, in order to get to that point, I've learned that you need to be first very connected to your own emotions, okay? So everything that's around us affects everything inside us. And sometimes we don't notice because we are so numbed already, okay? Because imagine just opening or watching, opening a newspaper or watching any news channel, so much violence and so much very powerful stuff that are around us, and negative, that we need to block all that, because if we will open ourselves, to really absorb what's going on around us, it's devastating. Okay, so I think we have created that type of disconnection. Okay, in order to be able to go on with our daily lives. So anyway, I've made some exercises in the past where, before going to a shoot where I know I'm going to spend 3, 4, 5 days with a particular animal, I start to get myself into a special state, okay? I don't see anything negative in the television or whatever, I start reading poetry, I start to listen to very particular music, that's just going to open my spirit and my soul. And I found out that when I do that, and then before entering into the ocean, I do some meditation, maybe, and I ask permission the ocean and the animals, for them to accept my presence. And I found that it does make a difference in my images, in the final result. If I take some time, to get myself ready emotionally, and then go in the water, that if I don't do it.
Well, let me ask, because I think we all appreciate that, and I think we all share in that when we go out and photograph. But the question I have is that because there's so many technical aspects and so many safety concerns and things that you need to understand and deal with, and also your time is limited when you're underwater. How do you balance those aspects with this idea of trying to be at one with the creature and with the sea?
Yes, the thing is, to start underwater photography, I think you first need to be a good diver. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not a good diver, if you cannot control your buoyancy, if you don't feel really at ease on the water, then it's going to be really difficult to start looking at beauty and to start to connect with your camera and everything else and with the animal. Because if you're dealing with all the technical aspects, it's very hard. So you need to first take care of that, be very proficient on the water. And then, because now it's very easy to go underwater, okay? You don't have any fears, you don't have any technical impediments, that are gonna make you,
Right.
And then once you get that out of the way, you go on the water, and then it's very easy, It's like It's like being above water. You just don't think about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You just breathe, relax. And actually, I get very relaxed on the water. That's one thing that I love. And all the chaos that sometimes I feel above water, it just disappears.
And do you seek out certain animals, and or is it like, let's say for example, I want to get a photo of a whale shark, and I haven't done that. Do you specifically look for certain animals, or how do you like decide? I mean, is much of your work done on assignment, or is it all kind of based on what you feel like you want to do?
To throw a point, I imagine it's also dependent on migration, because certain animals are there certain times of the year and they're not other times. It's all migratory. For a lot of these animals.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the dives are going to be seasonal. So if you want to see a particular animal, you need to be there, during a particular time of the year. So you need to plan for that. So it's a logistic. It's very complex, the logistic for what I do, because sometimes I get assignments by some dive magazines. They want to take and sometimes I even write articles, because for me it's a chance, to be, in a trip, and then I don't need to pay for that, and they pay me, and that's wonderful. And so that's one part of the things I do. And then a couple of friends of mine, they are organizing trips all around the year. So they're, like they're putting in their advertising that I'm going to be the photographer on board, and I'm going to help people, with tips. And I get to go with them. So, have fun, and I get to take my pictures. And sometimes I do some trips by myself, It all depends. And of course, the ocean is so big, and there are so many different animals that I would love to shoot, that I would need like 10 lives.
Say, out of every 10 dives that you do, how many of those dives will you come back with what you consider very successful photographs?
If the conditions are good on the water, I usually can come up with at least one, a manageable image from every dive. Yes.
Okay. At the end of your tank time, you come up and you have nothing that's exciting. You're okay with that too, right? Because you basically just spent an hour or so underwater in your favorite place.
The day I won't feel that, I won't do it anymore.
Okay.
For me, photography on the water is just like a pretext to be exactly where I want to be.
Okay.
Yes, so it takes me there. So my goal is not to take amazing images. My goal is just to be on the water. And if I come up with amazing images, fantastic, then it's a double game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the main thing is to be there, and enjoy just spending time on the water and spending time with these amazing animals.
That's a great attitude. Great attitude. Yeah. Let me ask you about some of your ideas on composition. And will there be photos that you won't take? I mean, are you somebody who shoots a lot, or are you somebody who shoots very little? And what to you are images that you won't take?
Yeah, I think as my photography career progress, I'm taking every time less images, because now I'm more. I think I know a little bit more better than before. What to look for.
You're more selective.
Yes, exactly. Right now I'm more selective of the type of situation that that I would love to shoot. And so before I was taking, I don't know, maybe 1,000 images every dive, and that has come down a lot, because I find out, with some experience that I have now, that it's not worth it. Sometimes it's just not worth it to be just shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And but sometimes when everything, like all the animals, the conditions, the ocean, sometimes when everything works, I can feel it, when I'm on the water, that this is the moment, the perfect moment. And sometimes that's where my greatest images come from very particular times, because sometimes you can go and look for a particular animal and make a long trip or whatever, and maybe you don't find it, maybe the ocean, it's very wavy, and the visibility is not very good. It happens a lot,
A lot of variables down there, I would imagine.
a lot. Yes.
But it's great when that magic happens,
I can feel that magic as I'm shooting. And then, I sometimes I come up with a lot of very, very nice images. Yes. And that feeling is also amazing.
Do you find that you do cropping a lot? Because I was thinking you don't have a lot of control under there. You're floating. Your subject is floating, and you're both moving around, fighting the tides, playing this little dance. I mean, you're trying to get closer, and this animal's checking you out, pulling back, getting closer, and sometimes you get a great shot, but the image is kind of small. So, do you have any reservations about cropping the image to make it the final image that much stronger?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard not to crop on the water because, animals are moving fast and I don't like to crop a lot. I have a limit where I will, even though it might be a great image, but if I need to crop it a lot, then I won't do it, and then I just say, well, next one.
Is that based on resolution and image quality?
Yeah, it's the resolution. It's going to lose a lot of quality for sure. And it's not worth it, in my opinion. Sometimes I get the time to do the final composition on the water if I have the time to. But sometimes with the sharks and fast-moving animals, it's very hard. But it's also manageable to at least, give your image an idea on the water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe I can put the shark on the left, or maybe I can put it on the right, or, maybe it's not going to end up in the exact same position, but at least I can manage, I can see it a little bit of the final image, and I can frame for that on the water. Yes.
Can you speak a bit more about your other post-processing, especially when you're going from color to black and white, what you use, what programs you use? And
I only use Lightroom for post-production.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Photoshop, it's fine, but I think it's designed for designers, for graphic designers. So I find it very complex, and I don't know how to use Photoshop, and I don't want to learn. It's so complex. And of course, you can do everything in what I do in Lightroom. You can do it in Photoshop and a lot more. But in my case, I found that everything that I would like to do in an image, I can do it in Lightroom. A lot of people think that my images or some of my images are Photoshop, but actually it's very easy because if I want a completely white background, imagine a shark and the ocean. That's it. When you shoot it, the ocean is going to be blue, and the shark is going to be whatever color the shark is. Okay? Right. Usually it's going to be some grayish. So there are two colors, okay? They are not the same. So when I translate it into black and white, then I have a light gray and a darker gray. And this is the trick. Above water, you might only have one good exposure in order to get your whole scenery just perfect, lighting-wise. It's one setting to get a good exposure. But on the water, you can have up to 7 different steps to get this good exposure. So if in my final image, I want my background, my blue, to be a very, very light gray, almost white, then you need to shoot for that. You need to expose for that, for a very, very light blue. Or in the contrary, some in my images, you see the blue is actually black. Then you need to expose for a very, very dark blue. And then when you translate it into black and white, then you just go give that particular color, the blue, more light or less light. Just take or give some light. And that's it.
Okay. The sense of suspension and of the animals floating kind of in this almost, it's not even seems like water, that there's nothing you add to that in post-production. That's just simply the composition and the lighting, really.
Yes, that's it. No, nothing in post-production. No, I don't take or put anything in my image yet.
Right. Let me ask maybe really quickly, what are the settings you use on your camera, like in terms of your ISO, your shutter speed, and even the white balance? How do you establish your settings with the Canon?
It depends a lot. It depends how deep you go and the available light. Right. But let's say today, if you go and you're going to shoot in the first 15, 20 feet, then you can go, and you have a good visibility and a good sun rays. I don't know. Maybe you can go with a ISO 200, and then maybe f8.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need a very big. And it also depends on the lens. If you're using a fisheye lens, then you don't have to worry about the depth of field. So. Yeah, it varies.
Changing subjects a little bit to talk about the animals that you're dealing with and maybe any problems or issues that you've had or safety concerns. I mean, I read on your website that you want to be a voice for the sea, and many people have a lot of fears, particularly about sharks. And do you have any comments you'd like to make about that? And I understand that. For people who aren't so comfortable underwater, it's a totally different idea. But how do you handle? I mean, is it more about just understanding your place in the water and being calm, and maybe you can have some stories to share?
Yes, definitely. All the fears that we have for the animals on the water, especially the sharks, are just in our heads, because in reality, sharks are they don't pose a real threat to humans. Yes, there are some attacks every year, and some people die, but there are only in average 5 deaths due to sharks attack every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they get eaten by the sharks; they just get bitten.
Right.
And of course, it's a wild animal with a big mouth with a lot of teeth, and one bite, can be fatal. But if you put that into perspective, we kill, in average 70 million of sharks every year. But how many people die from car accidents every year?
No, of course, yeah.
Actually, there's only in the United States, more than 100,000 people die every year from secondary effects from drugs prescribed by a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we are not afraid of taking that medicine, you know what I mean?
But what are your safety concerns? I mean, what creatures are more dangerous that we don't realize, or what is your concerns, your safety concerns when you're underwater?
Yeah. Well, I think the ocean is actually a very safe place for humans to visit, okay? For me, in my opinion, there are not really very real dangers, or at least not some that you can avoid, like currents, that can be a danger.
Mm-hmm.
But from animals' point of view, there is really not a lot of danger. Maybe some jellyfishes that can be fatal if touched, so you want to certainly avoid them. But they are only in certain areas, so you will also know, okay, in what areas exactly. So try to avoid them.
And that's also a passive danger. It's not like they're coming to get you. It's just that they have those tentacles dangling, and if you happen to swim near it and brush against it, they got you. They're not looking for you, though.
Exactly. So yes. So, but I'm not saying that. Yeah, okay, no, don't worry, just jump in front of 1,000 sharks and it's gonna be fine. No, I'm not saying that. Okay, I'm saying if you want to go there, just be prepared for whatever you're gonna encounter, and you're gonna be fine. If you are prepared for that dive, and if you are not, then start to learn with somebody that does. Okay.
Of course.
So I didn't went to encounter sharks by myself. When I was studying, because some people did that before me, and I am grateful to them because they show all of us the reality of what a shark really is in relation to humans. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there were people that preceded me in that way, and so we can all learn from them.
It sounds like most of your work is in and around Mexico. Can you speak about other places on the earth where you photographed, and what are some of your favorite places?
Yeah, I've been to some places in Asia, like in the Philippines and South Africa. Also in Port Elizabeth, I was looking for the sardine run over there. Mm-hmm. And I've also been a lot to the United States. There are some amazing places over there. I recently did a trip also to Florida, which you guys have some amazing animals over there. And where else? I've been also to the Bahamas, some islands in the Caribbean.
Right.
I've been to the Maldives.
Oh, wow.
Which is also a very, very special place to shoot on the water.
And
and there are so many.
what's next? What's your next project? Where are you going?
Yeah, I used to travel a lot. Like 1 year, I did went 3 times around the world. But now I want to focus a little bit more in Mexico because I want to go deeper with in my photography with the certain animals. Because usually I can only I get only a few days with a particular animal, so there are only certain shots that you can get in those days. So I would like to go deeper in a sense of staying in the same place for maybe 2-3 months, okay, and then try to see everything that particular place has to offer in terms of wild animals that I can shoot, and to shoot them a lot, because I think, you can go deeper and create more amazing images if you spend more time with them. You know what I mean? Because then you start to see more and more and more details that at the beginning you don't see.
Right.
So that's my next thing. Yeah, and I want to explore new areas in Mexico, and I've been doing that with some friends.
And what are the animals that you're looking to spend more time with?
Yeah, I love the pelagic animals, the ones that are not very close to the shore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I would love to shoot more whales, definitely.
Okay.
And a lot more sharks, because there are so many species of sharks, and I would love to spend more time with more species of sharks.
Okay.
I would just like to say something about conservation.
Yes.
Yes, because the deeper at the beginning, I was more concerned about the pictures and this and that. But once I started to be so much time in the ocean, I started to research about the animals and about the state of the ocean, and then I find out that the ocean, it's in really big trouble. But the thing is that the ocean is the main driven force for life on this planet. If we kill the ocean, we are actually killing ourselves. But we don't realize that. We don't realize that deep connection that we have in the ocean, because you might live in a city in the center of the mountains in Mexico or wherever in the world, and you might think, well, yeah, but I live here and I don't care what's going on in the ocean. But the problem is that we are so connected to the well-being of the ocean that like an example is half of the air we breathe on land is produced by microorganisms that live in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And we are polluting the ocean. We are overheating the ocean. We are changing the chemistry of the ocean. We have dumped so many chemical stuff and plastic, and that we are literally, and we are overfishing all the life in the ocean, that we are literally killing it. So now, after opening my eyes to this very, very sad and tragic reality, now it became clear for me that my images needed to have a higher purpose. Because one of the purposes is to show beauty, because I think to be in touch and with that beauty that is all around us is a very important part of every single human being. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't be letting that go, even though our daily lives might be very hectic and stressing. But I think it's very important for humans to be able to appreciate beauty everywhere. And that was the first goal. But now my second and higher purpose is to bring a message to the people that are going to be looking at my images of conservation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think it's very, very important for us humans to see that reality and start doing something about it.
Let me ask, do you think you need to change your style of photography to do that? Do you think you need to go more toward a documentary style and away from what we might want to call an art and wildlife style, or no?
Actually, in my images, and this is a conscious decision I made long ago, there is nothing that will show you all of these problems that I was talking about. Because there is a lot of people that are doing that, and I'm grateful for them. But sometimes if we overdo those images, it can also create people to react in a way that say, okay, I don't want to see that anymore, because it's very hard to deal with them. So I think something that can also initiate change in humans is through love and compassion. Because, if we fall in love with something, we're going to try to protect it, okay? So my images are aimed to people see them and to fall in love with all this magnificent life, I'm trying to show you this beautiful marlin, okay, in all this splendor. If you want to go a little bit deeper, maybe open our eyes to also that reality that it's very important for our life that all these animals stay healthy in the oceans, because they all have a particular role in the whole ecosystem that we are dependent upon. So hopefully people will start to open their eyes to that reality.
Points taken. If people would like to see more of your work, your website is?
It's christianvizl.com.
Okay.
Okay. Is there an Instagram account, or do you have that as well?
Yes, Christian Vizl.
Easy to find.
V-I-Z-L.
V-I-Z-L, by the way. So, and his work, if you haven't seen his work is absolutely wonderful. Okay. Well, Christian, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, folks, you stayed with us. We're going to give you a great promo code. Earlier in the show, we mentioned that we have a special deal on Icolite camera housings for underwater photography. 10% off to be specific. When you find the Icolite housing that suits your fancy, when you check out, enter promo code BHPodcast17, that's BHPodcast17 in the promo code box. This special promotion is valid from May 25th through June 15th. Again, all you have to do is go to our site, pick out a Icolite housing that you like, write BHPodcast17, that's BHPodcast17 in the promo code box, and you'll get 10% off on your order. How's that? Okay, that's a wrap on another wonderful show. Do keep in mind that we are having a second underwater photography show coming up in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, on behalf of John Harris, Jason Tables, and myself, I'm Alan Weitz. Thank you so much for tuning in today.